Now, in order for the United States to get prepared to be involved in this huge war, the U.S. decides to take over the economy. Yep, the government takes over the economy. All that talk about laissez-faire and liberal economics and all that doesn't matter. We push that to the side because it's wartime, okay? It's a wartime economy. So the United States government is going to create several federal agencies, brand new federal agencies, and their job is going to be to control the economy, right? Let's talk about a couple of examples of these agencies. You got the War Industries Board, and this agency is responsible for rationing raw materials, right? You want to make sure that you're using everything efficiently. You want to cut waste. So the War Industries Board is dictating to businesses how much raw materials they could use when making products, right? Also, the War Industries Board is setting prices. Setting prices, okay? So yes, this is government control of an economy, okay? So you got a number of these federal agencies controlling different aspects of the economy, transportation, you got the Railroad Administration, you got the Food Administration, right? This is another separate agency which is working with American farmers, trying to improve their methods of production, right? So that they can produce food more efficiently. So we got food for the United States and our troops, as well as for the Allies, right? So the Allies in Europe will be getting American food as well. So got to make our farmers more efficient. So that's what the Food Administration is there for. All right. Also, you have another agency that's going to work with laborers here in the United States, and that is the War Labor Board. Okay, the War Labor Board. So we can't have, like a bunch of strikes going on during World War I, because if the workers stop working, that's going to slow down production. It's going to make us inefficient, and we could suffer at war. Okay, and so there were strikes that went down for sure. Especially during this moment, because the workers know that they're needed, and so it's the best time to strike, really get what you want. But the War Labor Board was an agency that was created to try to give workers what they're asking for. So you have unions bringing complaints to the War Labor Board, and the War Labor Board is going to negotiate with employers to give the workers what they want so that they don't strike, and we can keep the production moving in the war economy. Also, you remember the Sherman Antitrust Act? Remember that this law that's trying to break up the big trusts, because we don't want companies working with each other and getting rid of competition, right? Or restricting economic competition. That's not good, right? For liberal economies. But during wartime, all that goes out the window. So the antitrust laws are going to be put on hold, right? Antitrust laws, you're not going to prosecute those. In fact, the government is going to encourage rival businesses to work with each other, right? To try to maximize efficiency for the economy to help the war effort, okay? Wow, so this is all coming together. It's a totally different economy during wartime, right? Eventually, Congress is going to pass 2 revenue acts, which are going to increase income taxes for the people of the United States. So you're going to see a pretty significant jump in taxes for the wealthy, especially. Because remember, the 1%, that's where all the money is. So you got to tax them to get some money for the government to pay for this war. It costs a lot of money, right? And so taxes for the wealthy, their income taxes are going to increase by about 50%, right? During this time. And that's going to help pay for the war. Wow. Another way to get money for this war is through the sale of Liberty bonds. So you're going to have everyday Americans showing their patriotic spirit by investing in the country, by investing in a Liberty bond. When you go to turn in your bond and get paid back the money that you invested, you're going to get some interest as well. So it's an investment. It's a financial investment. But when you pay for that bond, that money is going to the government, and they can use that money for the war. Okay, and so you have Americans, a lot of American women actually organizing bond drives where they would bring people together to try to sell as many Liberty bonds as possible. Now, the government is not just trying to control the economy during the war. It's also trying to control public opinion, and it's also trying to control what people are saying about the war. All right, so let's take a look at this. It's a period of war propaganda, and there's also some dissent about the war. There's some people who are against the war, but the government's going to try to shut them up. So let's talk about it. So the government is going to create an agency to create war propaganda, to try to get people to support the war. Okay, and so this agency is the Committee on Public Information, the CPI. It's pretty interesting what the CPI does. They're going to put together a whole bunch of propaganda, right? Pamphlets, handing out pamphlets to people, okay, so that people could read about why they should support this war. What are we fighting for, right? You're going to have physical public speakers going around the country, tens of thousands of these people who are explaining to the public, hey, this is why we're going to war. You should really be a patriot and support it. Okay, you got movie pictures, people going into theaters and watching little short pictures about why we should support the war. There's all types of propaganda. It's one of the first big national propaganda campaigns using modern technology. Okay, so you're going to see some interesting marketing techniques being used during this time by the CPI. And these marketing techniques are going to be used later on by businessmen, because advertisers are like, whoa, this works. We can manipulate the public on a massive scale and get them thinking what we want. We could manipulate their beliefs. Whoa, this is powerful. We could sell some product. We could make some money off of this. All right, so the marketing tactics used by the CPI are going to be used by marketers afterwards for business. The government is also trying to control people during this time, right? You're going to see a temporary prohibition during the war, and then, full-on permanent prohibition after the war. Prohibition, what am I talking about? I'm talking about it's illegal to drink alcohol, right? It's illegal to drink alcohol. Why? Why does the government care? Because they want to use those resources, the hops, the grain, instead of using those for making alcohol, those could be used to make food, right? To feed the people, to feed the troops, etc. Also, the government wants to control the workers. They want the workers to be more disciplined, show up for work. If they're drinking the night before, maybe they don't show up, right? Plus, a lot of breweries were owned by German Americans, and there's a lot of anti-German sentiment at the time. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. The government's also going to try to control public opinion through law by stopping people from criticizing the war effort in any way. Okay, so you're gonna see a couple of acts that are looking to restrict people from criticizing the war. And so first, talk about the Espionage Act. Okay, so the Espionage Act, this is going to impact freedom of speech, right? Because you could be prosecuted if you are trying to obstruct the war draft in any way, right? The draft is where you have to sign up for the draft, and if they call you, then you have to go to war, whether you want to or not, right? So it's like involuntarily having to join the army. And so if there are people out there like complaining about the draft or writing up pamphlets about why the draft is bad for the country or bad for Americans, you could be prosecuted for that. Okay, and so it's mainly about the draft, but it's also pretty much anything that's kind of criticizing the war, right? So like if there's certain publications that are going through the mail system, and if they're criticizing the war effort, criticizing the draft, they could be pulled from the mail system, right? The Postmaster General is like monitoring the mail system, and socialists especially are going to be attacked with the Espionage Act. We talked about Eugene Debs. Remember him? He ran for president, Socialist Party. He gets put in jail because he doesn't a speech against the war, against World War I. Right? He's in jail for a while. Wow. So yeah, it's like limiting freedom of speech, the Espionage Act. Then you have the Sedition Act, which is similar. It's kind of strengthening the Espionage Act. And basically the Sedition Act is going to make it illegal for you to criticize democracy or the democratic form of government. Right, so this is targeting the socialists. This is targeting the communists, the anarchists. Right, so if you're putting out socialist newspapers, then you could be prosecuted. So anything that's really going against the war effort, the Sedition Act makes it illegal. Okay, so similar to the Espionage Act, but just kind of strengthening it, expanding it a little bit. But it wasn't just the government trying to control public opinion, but also patriotic Americans, right? So you have Americans creating organizations to support the war effort, such as the American Protective League, okay? And so this is an organization, national organization, hundreds of thousands of members, and they would go on what are called slacker raids, right? You a slacker, right? You don't support the war, huh? You didn't sign up for the draft, slacker, huh? Well, so basically the APL, what they would do is they would go around and stop people on the street and say, hey, show me your draft card, right? You signed up for the draft, right? You got a draft card? Well, let me see, right? You support the war, right? You're a patriot, right? Okay, so it's basically like, you know, citizens oppressing other citizens, right? Forcing them to be patriotic, right? So remember we talked about the industrial workers of the world before. It's this big union. They're going to be attacked during this period of time because, you know, if you support strikes, that's not helping the war effort, and so the government is going to target them. So it's this environment of forced patriotism, right? So activists are the enemy. And so although the IWW didn't explicitly engage in anti-war activities, a lot of its members did, right? Unofficially on their own. And so you have leaders of the IWW being arrested. Okay, their offices are going to get ransacked and raided by authorities. Files will be taken. Who's going to be a member? How, you know, what's this organization doing? Trying to find out more about them. And you know, they couldn't use the post service, right? So the IWW is going to be blocked from using the post service as well, because maybe you know, what they're publishing is suspicious and it's anti-war. Okay, the IWW is later going to be tied to communism, the Soviet Union. So all of this attention and government attacks and the arresting of the leadership has a huge impact. All of this is going to lead to the downfall of the IWW after the war.